Objects of beauty, artefacts reflecting the societies we live in, or provocative, costly flights of fancy. Contemporary art has no simple definition, but its value has never been more potent and more discussed. To give us some insight into that world, I'm joined by author, journalist and contemporary art specialist Georgina Adams. Georgina, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you have actually published this book, The Dark Side of the Boom, recently, which goes into some of those issues I just mentioned. But let's start with one thing that's been dominating the headlines for the last couple of months. That's NFTs. Franco-Belgian auction house Milan is the latest institution to embrace this commercial activity after Christie's made history with the sale of an NFT made by Beeple, which went for $69.3 million. Now, I wanted to ask you about this. We've had the chance to get our head around this blockchain technology where these items live or are stored. But when it comes to the style of these pieces and their collectability, what are your thoughts on the sector?
Well, it's extraordinary. At the moment, NFTs are on fire, and there's been enormous speculation around it. Basically, the NFT, as we know, is a code on the blockchain, but it refers back to a digital work of art. So it's a work of art that lives on your computer. And I have to say that at the moment, as somebody coming from the traditional art world, most of them are pretty dire, quite frankly. They're sort of come from the gaming world, they're cartoonish, they're often inspired by manga. But NFTs have got some valuable things about them. One of them is that you can actually now the artist can get a royalty on resale. So they enable a secondary market. So it's not all bad, but I do think that it's a speculative bubble at the moment.
Indeed, I wanted to ask you about this world bubble that some people have been throwing around. Do you think that it will be short-lived?
Yes, I mean, I think that the prices are a bubble, and I think it's very, very linked to cryptocurrency. And as we know, cryptocurrencies is a very volatile market. Bitcoin and Ether, they go up and down. And I'm convinced that the NFT market will do the same thing. It will, to an extent, follow that. And of course, if cryptocurrencies are really seriously regulated, then I think this could have quite a dampening effect on the market, both for cryptocurrencies and for NFTs.
Fascinating. Now, that's something we'll perhaps be seeing in the months and years to come. Well, let's turn our attention to something that seems positively old-fashioned now. That is showing pieces of art in real life in a dedicated gallery open to the public. The Bourse de Commerce is the newest venue for contemporary art fans here in Paris, a French outpost for billionaire collector François Pinault that's been almost 4 years in the making. We went along to find out more. Open to the sky, open to new experimental visions, and finally open to visitors. Paris's former commodities exchange is now a site for artistic exchange as the latest home of François Pinault's contemporary art collection, including paintings, sculptures, videos and more, a collection that spans the 1960s to the present day. This building has 10 individual galleries, a studio for sound pieces and an auditorium. And the opening exhibition, Ouverture in French, gives us a taste of what this venue's all about.
Being open to everything is an attitude, an approach to life. If there was an S at the end of the word, it would mean open to specific things. But since there isn't, this means open, period. It has to be harmonious for the visitor. They should be surprised as they move through the gallery. We designed it so that each room can be seen from left to right or right to left. There's no beginning or end, it's a circle.
Politics and society loom large in the artwork, with previously unseen pieces from David Hammond dealing with race and oppression, photography from pioneering figures like Cindy Sherman and Richard Prince, tackling sex, identity and gender. And in a series of interconnecting galleries, work from the new guard, including Chinese painter Xinyi Cheng, who captures fleeting moments on the canvas.
I remember that night we had dinner at a restaurant, and then we walked out and she had a cigarette, and when she lighted the cigarette, and she had a lot of lights, pink and reddish light on her face. And I think that moment, the time was kind of frozen and it felt like a very long moment. And I wanted to make my paintings like very short stories. Although they look like portraits, but for me, they are situations.
Carving out a public space from a listed historical building was a delicate task, one that was entrusted to Japanese architect Tadao Ando, who had help from a team of French specialists.
This huge cylinder conceived by Tadao Ando and the NEM agency actually follows on from the unique and incredible history of this building, the Commodities Exchange, which is based on a circular design. And so within this historical architecture, which dates back to 1889, this new rotunda has been inserted to great dramatic effect.
After the Palazzo Grassi and the Punta dello Dogana in Venice, François Pinault's French outpost now constitutes the largest private collection of contemporary art in Paris. A showcase then for his personal treasures and perhaps in the future a new pantheon of late 20th century and early 21st century talent. Now, Georgina, you've referred to some of these private initiatives as showrooms as opposed to galleries. What do you mean by that, and what do you think the consequences are for the future of cultural institutions?
Yes, that's a very huge question. I've actually written a book that's coming out in the autumn about this. It's called The Rise and Rise of Private Art Museums. Yes, some of them, particularly there's a particular problem in China where some of these private museums are really just showrooms for selling art. It's not obviously the case for Pinault or for the Vuitton Foundation. That's a completely different matter. But it is a really interesting phenomenon of our times that so many private collectors have decided to have their own museums, build their own museums, keep their collections together, instead of doing what many did in the past, which was to give them to their local public institution.
And indeed, there's been criticism of these collectors from some quarters here in France. The opening of a Jeff Koons exhibition in Marseille recently prompted debate about the place of private collections in public museums. Artist Jean-Baptiste Gane says it's an inappropriate choice. Here's more from him.
What is also disturbing for all the people who are here is the relationship that the state is building with this great collector. And by doing this, the museum as an institution is complicit in the capitalization and speculation that is taking place on contemporary art.
Now, Jean-Baptiste mentions his concerns about speculation there. Georgina, you've written extensively about that phenomenon, the practice of buying art and then flipping it for profit. How would you say that's affected the market in recent years?
There have been periods of speculation, absolutely, and there was one particularly on what was called zombie formalism, which was artists in New York making rather neutral works of art that could be easily bought and sold and flipped, which is the term for speculating. And to an extent, I mean, speculation, what does it mean? It means buying something and then reselling it for a profit. So there's not really anything really wrong with it. But I think that this question of the Museum and the Jeff Koons exhibition, it's not the only example. I mean, here in London, we had Damien Hirst had a big exhibition at Tate. Koons himself was exhibited at the Centre Pompidou. And it's a fine line because public institutions are, as we know, particularly at the moment, are very cash-strapped, and quite often private collectors will support public institutions either with loans or even with hard cash, which they need. And they also have to show what the public wants to see. And for example, the Hearst exhibition had huge entry numbers. So I think it's very difficult to draw a hard line about whether something is desirable or not desirable in this case.
Indeed, and another factor that's influenced, if not the price, but the popularity or the visibility of contemporary art is social media. We're increasingly seeing celebrities and social media users generally sharing what they call Instagrammable art. How do you think that influences artists and the work they produce?
Well, in theory, it shouldn't influence artists, but of course, it's quite interesting to see that work that is suitable for Instagram with a certain format, it's quite graphic, quite easy to sort of see in one go. There are definitely artists who are producing work that's Instagrammable. But Instagram also has some some interesting aspects, and social media in general, is that it means that it can eliminate the middleman. So you can buy directly from the artist just from something you've seen on Instagram. And this, of course, plays into the whole NFT phenomenon, is that to an extent it eliminates what they call the gatekeepers, which are the curators, the selectors, the people who choose works of art that are going to be shown in a gallery, in a museum, or sold in an auction house. So I think what we're really seeing is quite a profound transformation in the art market at the moment.
A whole new virtual paradigm, and we look forward to hearing more about that in your next book. Georgina, thank you so much for joining us today. Now
Thank you for having me.
Now let's wrap up the show with a virtual art experience in the form of Krista Kim's Mars House, sold recently as an NFT. It's a digital rendering of a futuristic home beyond this planet. The artist says she wants to blend beauty with technological innovation in the virtual space or even in outer space. Take a look. Otherwise, do check out our website for more arts and culture. We're also on social media too. There's more news coming up on France 24 just after this.